folks, big day ahead for you guys. Lots of Kavanaugh's news, including a TYT scoop. We have an important breaking news on something we have discovered about Kavanaugh, and it might go to his state of mind and what did he know and what did the Republicans know before the allegations. So very, very interesting. We're gonna get to that in just a little bit in the program. And then later in the program, it turns out water is tremendously wet. More musings of Donald Trump.
But to be fair, we know that water is wet from the standpoint of water.
From the standpoint of water.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to that a little bit later in the program. He is bedeviling, but also at times accidentally amusing. Okay, and actually there might be good news from Donald Trump today, believe it or not, and that would be the hardest thing to believe. I know it seems a little unbelievable, but it might actually be the case.
Yeah, good news is not coming from Trump, but there is good news.
All right, yeah. We'll see. Okay, now later in the day, we have a great Rebel headquarters for you guys. Of course, we have an excellent post game for you. If you missed yesterday's post game with Eric Byler, please, if you're a member, check that out. We got a lot of people saying that was really, really interesting discussion of race in America. A lot of people really enjoyed that. Eric's part of our Rebel headquarters team and our TYT Investigates team as well. TYT.com/join to get all those post games. Today I got a couple of doozies for you guys, including a story about debauchery in Vegas. That leads me to believe that we should tax the rich even more. Okay, so that's coming up, and then old school tonight. So if you're a member, it's a great day to be a member. TYT.com/join. Actually, let's check the thermometer real quick. We did the member drive, started it right after Labor Day at 27,661. It's now 31,520. No, let's keep it real. Let's slow down a little bit. Okay, I'm just keeping it on 100 here. We're trying to get to 100. The campaign is beyond the left side of history. Progressives need a home. We believe we are it. Let's see if we can get to 31,600 by the end of today. That would be great. It's not asking for a lot, but any of you that are care about us fighting for progressives and getting our dozens of shows, that would be it's a great time to do it. Okay, so let's get started with Kavanaugh. What do you got, Anna?
All right, lots of updates on the Kavanaugh story. Some of the schoolmates who are personally, who have personally known the victim in the Brett Kavanaugh case, Christine Blasey Ford, Dr. Ford, are coming forward and they're sharing their experience going to school with her and also some of the things that they heard while they were going to school. And one of the latest examples includes a woman by the name of Kristina Miranda King. She went to school with Dr. Ford and she shared her perspective in a Facebook post, which soon went viral. She didn't expect the circus that she would then be pulled into, but I think it is important to share her perspective with you. Now, keep in mind that what she shares is not specified based on who she got the information from. So we don't know whether or not this is something that she heard because Dr. Ford spoke about it, or if Kavanaugh spoke about it, or if Mark Judge spoke about it. But here's what she shared. Christine Blasey Ford was a year or so behind me. I did not know her personally, but I remember her. This incident did happen, and here's what she says following that. Many of us heard a buzz about it indirectly with few specific details. However, Christine's vivid recollection should be more than enough for us to truly deeply know that the accusation is true. So apparently people had heard vague details about that occurrence. And remember, Dr. Ford said that she hadn't spoken to anyone about it until she went to couples therapy with her husband in 2012. So, I'm curious personally, if this was spoken about back then, where did these details come from? Dr. Ford said that she hadn't spoken about it.
But remember, she said that she locked herself in a bathroom and then ran out of the house. So it's when she heard the guys finally go downstairs. So it is entirely possible that the other people in the party saw that, or they heard it from Kavanaugh or Judge, and then those rumors spread around the school. Now, if you were in a court of law, this would be pretty weak evidence. It's secondhand, it's from 35 years ago. It's unclear how she heard it, and she heard rumors. She didn't directly witness it. Now, in terms of whether it affects your point of view on whether it happened or not. Well, I always try to think of it in two ways. One is, what if the shoe was on the other foot? And the second is, just being human related to my own experiences. So I remember, and I won't get into the details of it, a particularly stark story that was a rumor in my high school. And so does that mean that it definitely happened and that it definitely happened in the way that I remember? No. But if that story came about in a setting like this, where it was either a Republican, let's say a conservative or a liberal justice that was up for the Supreme Court, and people said, that person accused the other person of this, I'd say, well, I definitely remember that story being told in high school. Now, that doesn't mean that it happened exactly in that way, but it does mean that certainly people knew about it back then. It's not a figment of someone's imagination. So it's just that, so when I look at it from that human perspective and my own perspective, I think it makes it a little bit more likely that it's true, just a little bit.
I mean, yeah, sure, a little bit. I mean, I would take this with a grain of salt. However, there is a bigger, I guess, effort being taken by people who want to back Dr. Ford, and these are people who went to school with her, who knew her personally, and they have signed a letter stating that they not only support her, but they believe her because they also experienced an environment where the boys at this elite school acted a certain way. And I didn't know this, but Julia Louis-Dreyfus is one of those people who signed the letter. She actually went to the girls' version of this elite school. And so she shared the letter on Twitter, and she also said, I was class of '79 and signed this letter. And to give you some more information, the girls' school is Holton Arms, and it says that Dr. Blasey Ford's experience is all too consistent with stories we heard and lived while attending Holton. Many of us are survivors ourselves. So 200 women have signed that so far, and I think that means something.
Yeah, I think that Kristina Miranda King's comments are more relevant than that letter. That letter is relevant to give you the context of the times, but it says nothing about Kavanaugh or that particular party or that particular incident. It's just a number of women saying stuff like that used to happen with quite regularity. That's pretty vague. It just gives you some context, that's all. It doesn't mean that it's useless, it's that context is important. So 5 former federal prosecutors wrote an op-ed today talking about why they believe that Christine Blasey Ford's version of the story is very credible. And so I just want to go over it real quick for you guys, because some of the stuff they were saying backs up what we've been saying for a couple of days. They said, look, the fact that she told a therapist back in 2012 about this incident, and that would take as prosecutors, we would look at that very, very seriously. Like, why would she make that up 6 years ahead of time for something she has no idea would happen today regarding that person? She took a polygraph test. They said, look, it's not admissible in court, but we know in our experience that it is. It's relevant. It's an important piece of data that she wanted to take one, took one, and passed it. She is not particularly political, so doesn't have a deep motive here. If she worked in politics for some portion of her life or today, you might question her motive more. I like that they're thinking at it from a prosecutor's point of view as to what makes sense and what doesn't. And one more.
So one real quick, and we've mentioned this in our prior stories covering this. While she hasn't worked in politics, she has been a Democratic donor, and not a huge donor, but she's given small donations to Democratic candidates. So just to be fair, it's not like she hasn't had anything to do with politics.
Yeah, no, but I mean, she voted. I hope a lot of you vote. I don't think that that's a big thing. And her donations were small. They're not these Soros, Koch brothers kind of. She's not like a big donor in that sense. She's like a regular person who gave a little bit of money from time to time. So she cares about politics, but doesn't work in politics.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to be absolutely clear.
Yeah, that's right. And then the last one is the one we've been mentioning for a couple of days, which is that they say if someone is making up a story, and remember these prosecutors have had to deal with people making up stories, and they got to decide, do you prosecute the case, do you go forward, or do you not, right? They said for her to put a defense witness in the room makes no sense at all. knowing that Mike Judge, the other person in the room, is friends with Kavanaugh and would likely be on Kavanaugh's side, if you were making up the story, you just wouldn't put him in the room. It's just, all that could do is hurt you. So the therapist one and the Mike Judge one are really good evidence that there's excellent reasons to believe her. She could still be wrong, she could remember wrong, etc. But when you add in today's news about Julia Louis-Dreyfus backing her, that's tiny. I mean, she happens to be a celebrity. You could technically say the vice president has backed her since she stars in Veep on HBO. But I think the Miranda King one is a little bit more relevant because we remember that rumor. It's just one more piece of evidence on top of what is already pretty good evidence that she didn't just make this up out of nowhere.
Right, and for me, it's not about us deciding whether or not Brett Kavanaugh is guilty. I mean, we can have our opinions. What's important is for an investigation to take place by the FBI. The FBI wouldn't do a criminal investigation since this isn't considered a federal crime. It's considered a crime on a state level. But the FBI would do what it was doing during the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas sexual harassment case. They wanted to provide information so the Senate can vote based on all the information available in regard to the accusations, and that's what the FBI should do here.
Of course, Donald Trump, as usual, fabricated things about the FBI. He said they really don't do that. That's not what they do. Not remotely true. They do it all the time. It's called a background check. He said, well, they already did 6 on him throughout his different hearings earlier on too, when he was up for nominations for lower courts. That's true, but it's also true that in the Anita Hill story, the FBI jumped in and did another background check once those stories emerged because they wanted to give the senators as much information as they could before they voted. So there is excellent precedent for doing that and asking for that. Now, unfortunately, the White House has to ask the FBI to do it. And Donald Trump, of course, says no way.
So let's talk about that a little bit because that's another angle to the story that we should dig into. All right. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford has agreed to answer questions by the Senate Judiciary Committee. However, she has specified one specific condition, and that condition is that the FBI conduct an investigation into the allegations before she testify. Now, it seems as though the Trump administration is unwilling to allow for that to happen. The White House would have to ask the FBI to conduct the investigation, and to be absolutely clear, it is not a criminal investigation that's being called for. It would be an investigation to look into these allegations to provide senators the information necessary so they can make a decision the best that they can. However, the Republicans in the Senate are not happy with this, and it seems like they're going to push this Monday testimony through and then go for a vote. So echoing Senate Democrats, she said an investigation should be the first step before she is put, quote, on national television to relive this traumatic and harrowing incident. But here's what Republicans did. They signaled that they would not negotiate an alternative date specifically, and would go ahead with the hearing without her or declare it unnecessary if she refuses to appear, then possibly move to a vote. Now, one of her lawyers, Lisa Banks, was talking about this on CNN, and here's what she had to say about it.
Are you saying there has to be an investigation by the FBI or else Professor Ford will not testify?
What we're saying is that there should be an investigation because that's the right thing to do.
If there's not an investigation, would she appear on Monday?
She is prepared to cooperate with the committee and with any law enforcement investigation. And that has been her position, and it continues to be her position. So she will cooperate with the committee in whatever form that takes, and it remains to be seen. We have to talk with Senator Grassley's office and the other committee members to determine what form that will take.
Just a random side note here. That's what a lawyer looks like and sounds like. Because we've just gotten used to Trump's lawyers on TV
like
all the time. Well, let me tell you something. Is the truth really truth? Is a crime really a crime? And we've gotten lawyers used to lawyers being clowns on television. But that's what a professional lawyer sounds like. Okay.
I agree, yeah. So, all right, so I think that what Dr. Ford is asking for makes all the sense in the world, because quite honestly, if you don't have the FBI investigate this and try to get to the bottom of the truth, you have 2 individuals testifying on this date, which would be on Monday, and it would be at least painted as a he said, she said type situation. I think that it's important to have the FBI get involved and try to get to the bottom of the truth. That way we're not left trying to decide, oh, is she telling the truth? Is he telling the truth? Now, we all have our opinions on who's telling the truth, but I think that the FBI would really solidify the facts of this case.
Or at least they have a potential to. So what would they do? I've now read investigators saying, well, look, just background check 101 in a situation like this is you simply start contacting all the people in the yearbook, okay, of those years and see if there are any witnesses. So it seems like a he said, she said, but wait a minute, there were probably a lot of people at that party. So now some classmates have begun to come forward and say that there were rumors of an incident at that party. Well, who was at the party? Did they see the guy stumbling down? Did they see her locked in the bathroom? Did they see her run out in a panic? Well, those would be really, really relevant facts, and why the FBI should do that background check, just like they did in the Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill case. And there's 2 reasons why Trump doesn't want it done. He, of course, lies and says they don't want to do it, and it never gets done. Neither one of those is true. Okay, so he doesn't want it done because 1, they might find out things that corroborate her story, and 2, it's going to take a little longer. And the longer it takes, the closer we get to the midterm elections, and the less likely it is that they can confirm Kavanaugh or anyone else. And then if the Democrats win over the Senate, they might not be able to confirm anyone. So that's why the Republicans are like, we gotta go right now.
Right, I mean, for the first time ever, Republicans have your tick, 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 tick in the back of their mind when it comes to this case, because they don't look, they want political wins. They want a conservative Supreme Court justice to be confirmed as soon as possible, because there is a pretty good chance that Democrats would have more control after the midterms. And so they don't care whether or not this is true, right? And I believe that some of them already knew about this before it became public information. We've talked about that before. But what I also find really interesting is the way some Democrats are reacting to it. So you have Democrats who are coming out strong, and I commend them for that. And then you have wannabe Democrats like Feinstein who say things that are used to the Republicans' advantage, and this drove me crazy. So she was stopped by Fox News, and Fox News interviewed her, and here's what she had to say. And keep in mind, conservatives are now using her words against Dr. Ford.
No one called her or called her lawyer. My understanding is she got emails. I have no say. I'm the lead Democrat, so this is all up to the Republican side. I can't say everything's truthful. I don't know.
Okay, so it's just saying I can't say anything's truthful, right? Like, you'll have one political party who's like, she's lying, we don't believe her, right? They have no problem saying they don't believe Dr. Ford right off the bat, even though they have no idea. And then Feinstein, just don't say, I don't know if she's telling the truth. I mean, that's a fair statement in a real world where things aren't as dirty as they are here in the United States. Keep that to yourself. Find a way to finesse the situation and say something that's gonna play better, so your own words won't be used against Dr. Ford. The way I would have handled it is I would have said, you know, I think it's important, I'm inclined to believe the client, but I think it's important for the FBI to investigate this and get to the bottom of the truth.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Feinstein keeps slipping up and framing things from a Republican perspective. She's done it many times before. And Anna's right that this is not a normal situation where if you're having a conversation between friends and you want to be fair and say, look, I don't know that it definitely happened. That's a fair statement. But if you say that in the context of today's America, that quote will be taken out of context and put in every paper and every right-wing blog and every cable news show, and that's exactly what's happened. So it makes it seem like her main backer, Feinstein, says, well, I have no idea if she's telling the truth. And especially when you see it written as opposed to the context even of that short interview there. So it's the Democrats are quite often frustrating. But look, but from a person who wants to get at what's real instead of just picking sides, I wish they would all come at it with a more open mind. So a bunch of the Republicans have already said, "Oh no, she's definitely quote unquote mixed up," and
that's their play now. That it's possible that this did happen, but it wasn't Kavanaugh. She's mixed up. That is the talking point that they're now repeating over and over again in the news cycle.
Yeah, and a whole bunch of them like Cornyn say, "No, just no way, not true." Again, how do you know? You didn't talk to her. You won't let the FBI do the background check. You won't talk to witnesses. And so, to be fair, the Republicans, a couple of them did come forward, like Corker and Flake, and say, "No, we got to hear people out." Which leads me to my last point.
Corker changed his tune, though.
No, I know he did.
Yeah, Corker said Republicans extended a hand in good faith. If we don't hear from both sides on Monday, let's vote.
No, I know, and so I don't agree with him. Of course, I think they should have the FBI do the background check and not just for political reasons of wanting to delay it, but like, let's find out. I mean, again, Judge Napolitano, we live in strange times, made a good point on Fox News where he said, look, if they don't take their time to find out what actually happened, it's gonna stain Kavanaugh forever. So maybe he didn't do it, but if you just rush through it, people will always have that question mark over him. And so now, given that, I still think she should testify. And so let's talk it through, but
I would not testify. I wouldn't. And I had the same opinion as you until I looked into it further. The reason why I wouldn't testify at this point is because Republican senators they've made up their minds. And so is there any possibility that having her testify would change their minds? At this point, no, they've made up their mind. However, there is a possibility if you have the backing of the FBI. Remember, the FBI, Dr. Ford is the one asking the FBI to do the investigation. I think that that's powerful by itself because that means, no, I want them to get to the bottom of this and I want to have, what they're gonna find is gonna back me up. That's what it messages to everyone, in my opinion. So having any possible evidence or information that the FBI could have would help strengthen her testimony. Otherwise, she's just gonna testify in a room full of dudes who have already decided that she's making things up or she's mixed up. And by the way, she's dealing with what you can expect, the death threats. She's moved out of her home. She's in hiding now. She's hired private security. This is a difficult thing for her to go through. And I think that, if you're gonna testify and put yourself through that, you want it to be worth it.
Yeah, we have gotten used to the sick state of society because we often get the threats so frequently that we've kind of become inured to them. But it's sad that anytime anybody comes forward politically, it's against the right wing. It is a fact that they will immediately get death threats. People will find out where they live and they'll have to change where they live. I mean, think about how fascistic that is and how sick that is.
Right.
And she was worried about that, and that's what she got immediately. But look, on the core issue here, whether she should testify or not, if they really vote on Monday and they don't hear from her, that's terrible. And so I think that she would. My guess is that attacking her would backfire if she went to go testify. My guess is that hearing it from the person herself would make a big impact on the country. And so it's less than ideal, to say the least, under these circumstances without a background investigation to testify. But in my opinion, it's way better than not testifying and having them just push this through.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm getting so tired of people caving to Republicans who just want political wins and doing everything under their terms. I think they just want to rush this. That's the way that this is playing out. They just go, no, we want to vote. We want to vote. Midterms are coming. We're losers, and we're going to lose the House, and so and possibly the Senate, and we don't want to risk that, right? So no, let's hurry up. Let's hurry up. That's so pathetic. Because here's the thing. At the end of the day, this is about way more than political wins. We're talking about a lifetime appointment. as a Supreme Court justice, someone who's gonna hand down rulings or decide on cases that affect all of our lives, whether you're a man or a woman. But to the Republicans, that doesn't matter. We want a conservative, we want a pro-corporate conservative in the Supreme Court. And so who cares if he's hurt people in the past? We don't want to get to the bottom of the truth. I don't want to cave to that. I don't want to cave to that and do everything under their terms. You see what I'm saying? But I do see your point. It is important for her to testify. I don't know what the right answer is. I just know if I were in her shoes, I'd want the same thing.
And look, those are tough shoes to be in right now, because she's going to get attacked either way, whether she testifies or doesn't. The Republicans already hate her. And by the way, if she doesn't testify and they just push this through, some Democrats might be frustrated. And so she's in a really bad spot. It's another piece of evidence that why would you come forward on something like this, knowing that you're going to get stuck in this catch-22 and your life is going to be turned upside down if it didn't happen.
And while you share your thoughts of feeling sorry for her, that she has to go through all this, and we know how brutal people can be when it comes to politics, Donald Trump has decided that the real victim in this story is Brett Kavanaugh. And he spoke about it again, so take a look.
Really, they're hurting somebody's life very badly, and it's very unfair, I think, as you know, Justice Kavanaugh has been treated very, very tough. And his family, I think it's a very unfair thing, what's going on. And he has an unblemished record. This is a very tough thing for him and his family. And we want to get it over with. At the same time, we want to give tremendous amounts of time. I'd really want to see her. I really would want to see what she has to say. If she shows up, that would be wonderful. If she doesn't show up, that would be unfortunate.
So a couple of things there, Anna. One, it's obvious that he was coached. Whatever you do, do not attack her. That is going to cost you elections. Now, even if it doesn't cost you personally, it's going to cost the Republicans. Do not attack her. And for once in his life, he at least had enough discipline not to attack her. He wound up attacking the Democrats and Feinstein, et cetera, later on. But he can't help himself. He's got to embellish everything. So he's like, we're going to give this tremendous amounts of time, because they told him, hey, sound like you're being fair, right? Tremendous amounts of time. The Republicans just said they're going to vote on Monday. Is 3 days tremendous, 4 days tremendous amounts of time? But he has to add tremendous in front of everything. But of course, the core point is not, my God, she might have gone through this, even if it wasn't Kavanaugh, and I feel terrible for her, and we hope she's okay. That doesn't even occur to him. He just constantly looks at it from the point of view of the accused, shoes he's stood in plenty of times before, for good reason. So he's always like, oh my God, it's so unfair to him. It's so unfair to him. And he said it about Porter, he said it about himself, he said it about almost every man who's been accused of committing some sort of transgression towards a woman. And almost never in any of those instances did he ever once say, oh, I feel terrible for her.
No, of course not, of course not. But I will give him, I guess, some credit for somehow managing to avoid attacking her specifically, right?
Yeah.
Because he can't control himself. Like, I feel like he's gonna blow in any moment.
Yeah, that was the most amount of self-control I have ever seen him exercise.
It's kind of amazing.
And by the way, was that a good statement? Not remotely.
Not
it was a
even close.
clownish, ridiculous statement, but that's as good as it gets with Donald Trump. But the whole time, as I was looking at him, to me, it screamed bully.
There's parts of his statement really fast that maybe gives more credence to her not doing it. Because I was thinking too, let's hear from her. That's the first thought, because we at least want to see what the real story is. And he keeps saying, when he talked about not doing anything with the FBI, I trust the Congress to do what they're gonna do. They're gonna get to the bottom of this. They're gonna work it out. I trust them to do it. I want to hear her. The plan is to, I mean, we've seen it before. We know the playbook. It's to attack her character, find anything you can about her, and that will be the litany of the things they will come after with. Who are you? What did you do this time? There's one time you were 16. What about the time you were 17? And then the time you were 21. What about then? And the whole time it'll be taking her down with no background to what really happened. That's the plan. And he's like, I can't wait to see her show up so we can go after her. That is the plan, and that's what they're setting up for. He trusts them to do the takedown.
So yeah, Jared, it's a really good point, and it backs up what Anna was saying earlier.
So it's a really good point.
So one more strike against testifying is, what if they're planning an ambush? And it's not like it's not possible. And
what do you mean, what if?
No.
Are you crazy?
No, look, that ambush could turn into a disaster for themselves if they're perceived as attacking this respected doctor who is coming forward under this traumatic situation, etc. But if they start getting into, oh yeah, but at the age of 21, did you this? At the age of 37, 100%. Did you do that? Right, and then without any advanced knowledge, she has to defend her whole life while the entire nation is watching. That's a hell of a spot to be in.
And remember, this is a hearing where they're testifying about these allegations. You're not gonna have the lawyer get involved and be like, what do they say again? Like,
objection, Your Honor.
Objection.
Okay.
There we go.
I'm not out of order, you're out of order.
Order in the court, order in the court. There's none of that, right? So it's even more difficult than a criminal case involving allegations.
Because the whole nation is judging it.
Exactly.
Yeah, look, it's a very, very tough spot. I really hope the country hears her point of view, but I understand the significant downsides of that.
Let's take a break. When we come back, have a scoop and we want to share it with you.
Yeah, it's an important story that TYT investigates. It's about Kavanaugh, and I don't want you to miss it because it could make a big difference. We'll do that when we return. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. Back on the Young Turks. First, I want to go to the members' comments here. Reynaldo Johnson writes in, I love that Cenk and Anna don't always agree and that I don't always agree with one or either of you. News delivered by humans, not humanoids.
So who did you agree with in that last segment? Me or Cenk? Let me know.
Hold, let me finish the comment. Then they say, I agree with Anna and JR this time. Okay, all right. So that's how you want to roll. I got you. All right. Duly noted. Duly noted. Okay. Now I'm going to Twitter. Kara Curley writes in, it's so frustrating that in situations like this, women have to move and get death threats, but the men get defended and coddled like babies. It's not great, but it causes me trust the woman far more because of it. Yes. Right now, as Trump said, oh my God, I feel so bad for him, it's so unfair for him. Meanwhile, she's in hiding, worried about her life.
Hiring private security,
right,
by the way, with her own money.
I don't know how she's gonna afford those lawyers and the private security, and people have no idea how that ruins your life financially too. Okay, Santos Juante writes in, Republicans waited an entire year for the presidency to end before filling a vacant SCOTUS seat. What's the rush? Another great point, and of course they don't care about that hypocrisy, but they waited 14 months and did not fill Merrick Garland, that seat for Merrick Garland. So, but now all of a sudden they're like, we got to vote by Monday. We got to vote by Monday. We have one more thing that I want to tell you guys about. A lot of you have been asking, hey, look, I'm already a member. Can I also donate or give money somehow to support what you guys are doing? My answer to that is, yes. Okay, so we literally came up with tyt.com/ yes. Okay.
I'm saying yes there, just in case.
tyt.com/ yes. So thank you guys for constantly asking about that and making us do it. So yes, if you want to give money there, look, anytime you like something we say, you want to go to tyt.com/ yes and do a donation, bless your heart. It supports home and progressives and makes us more possible. And we appreciate you guys looking out for us. Okay, now let's get to the story we broke.
All right. Back in 2015, Brett Kavanaugh gave a speech at Catholic University's law school. And during that speech, he said something interesting, especially given some of the sexual assault allegations against him today. Take a look at what he said during that speech.
We had a good saying that we've held firm to this day, as the dean was reminding me before the talk, which is what happens at Georgetown Prep stays at Georgetown Prep. That's been a good thing for all of us, I think.
Look, that's certainly not dispositive. A lot of people have said that because of the Vegas tagline and he's kidding around. But what happened next is interesting, and what TYT Investigates has uncovered.
Exactly. So TYT Investigates looked at the documentation that he submitted to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Of course, this is part of their review in the confirmation process. So he's supposed to disclose as much as possible, including some of the speeches that he's given. Now, TYT Investigates found that Kavanaugh's claim that what happens at Georgetown Prep stays at Georgetown Prep was a saying of his high school, of his in high school that does not appear in a transcript of the speech he submitted in response to the Senate Judiciary Committee's questionnaire. So they asked for this documentation, he submitted it, he submitted the speech, but he took that part out of the speech, out of the transcript. So.
Yeah, and Jonathan Larson broke this story. He makes it clear later, the transcript appears in essay form as it appeared in the spring 2016 issue of the Catholic University Law Review. So he spoke in 2015, they put it in the Law Review in 2016, and they took it out of that particular transcript. So it's not clear if Kavanaugh asked them to take it out or if the school, for whatever reason, made that decision on their own. TYT reached out, but got a very generic answer from the school that was not. That didn't prove anything either way. They said the Law Review publishes articles submitted by legal scholars and practitioners on a quarterly basis. So that doesn't really address the question. Now, why is this so important? Well, if Kavanaugh asked that part be taken out of the transcript, he would have asked back in 2015 or 2016, well before the allegations came out in 2018. So what made him concerned enough to ask them to take it out of the transcript? Not only that, he then submitted that transcript to the Senate. And so it had to be accurate, and it was not accurate. And the part that it left out was not irrelevant. It was not just a random anecdote about something that happened at the school cafeteria. It was a anecdote that was exactly relevant to these allegations.
Well, so I want to give you the entirety of that part of the speech, because I think even when you add even more context to it, I don't know, I find it more interesting. So let's go to graphic 12A. So he had said Mike Bidwill, Don Urgo, and Phil Merkel, all people the FBI should speak to, and they were all good friends. They were good friends of mine then and are still good friends of mine as recently as this weekend when we were all on email together. But fortunately, we had a good saying that we've held firm to this day, as the dean was reminding me before the talk, which is what happens at Georgetown Prep stays at Georgetown Prep. That's been a good thing for all of us, I think. That was the original speech. That's the speech he gave. But then in the version that was submitted in the transcript, he said, I'm proud to say that 3 Georgetown Prep classmates of mine, Mike Bidwill, Don Urgo, and Phil Merkel, happen to be 1990 graduates of this law school. They remain very good friends of mine, and they well reflect the values and excellence of both Georgetown Prep and this law school.
So he will be testifying on Monday. Democratic senators should ask him, did you take that part out, and why did you take it out? Why would you know in 2015 or 2016 to take out that part if you thought there was never any allegations against you? So because if he had left it in, okay, they did a lot of drinking back in the day. No one cares about that, okay? It's so if you said, oh, just kidding around, man, what we did at Georgetown Prep when we drank when we were underage and we shouldn't have, stayed at Georgetown Prep, and you didn't have a guilty conscience at all, you'd leave that in. Why wouldn't you leave that in? Why would you try to take it out? But if you're worried that some allegation is going to come forward that is far, far more serious, then you would take it out, and that means you knew about it. Because right now, Kavanaugh is claiming, oh, I might have known her in passing, but I didn't know who was going to accuse me before she revealed herself, because this never happened. No incident like this had ever happened. So golly gee, I wouldn't know anything about this. And so now there's also evidence that they knew each other before then. So him saying I knew her in passing seems also a little bit questionable. But this is a question that must be asked in the hearings. who took out that statement and why did they take it out?
Yeah, I think it's very relevant. So we'll see if anyone asks that question, but I am curious what his answer is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as always, I want to thank all of you guys that made TYT Investigates possible. That's your reporting team that's bringing out important revelations and questions that should be asked in a very important time in American history here. And please go and check out all the articles at tyt.com/investigates. And if you're watching this later, we'll have the link down below in the description box. Some great stories quoted from Bernie Sanders all the way to the New York Times from great reporters like Ken Klippenstein, who revealed that that we're training Saudi pilots who might be doing the bombings of civilians in Yemen here in America. Now drones going to the border. So many other important stories that have been broken by the TYT Investigates crew.
Let's take a break. When we come back, Donald Trump goes after Jeff Sessions again, and other news, including his thoughts on Comey.
Again, the going after Sessions is unbelievable, maniacal. I've never seen anything like this, as usual. Okay, with this guy. All right, we'll come back and tell you exactly what he did.